ሰላም ተመልካቾቻችን እንደምን ሰንብታችኋል? እንግዲህ በዛሬ ፕሮግራማችን ሶስተኛውና የመጨረሻው Empower the Community Weekend በሚለው ዝግጅታችን ላይ ጁላይ 27 ከቀረበው ፓወር ፓነል ዲስከሽን The Future of Tech የሚለው የመጨረሻውና ሶስተኛ ክፍል ይሆናል ማለት ነው። እንግዲህ ቴክኖሎጂ ህይወታችንን፣ አኗኗራችንን፣ ስራችንን ከቀን ወደ ቀን በጣም በፍጥነት እየለወጠ ያለ ዘርፍ ስለሆነ ይሄ ምንን ይመስላል፣ በስራችን ላይ በኑሯችን ላይ ምንን ብንጠብቅ ጥሩ ነው የሚለውን ዲስከሽን ነው የምናደርገው ማለት ነው። ወደዛ ወደ ፕሮግራማችን ልውሰዳችሁና ከኛ ጋር ቆዩ። እንግዲህ ይሄ ዝግጅት ትውልደ ኢትዮጵያውያኖች፣ ትውልደ ኤርትራውያን ያገሩም ሰው የሚሳተፍበት ፕሮግራም ስለሆነ ቆይታው በሙሉ በእንግሊዝኛ ይሆናል ማለት ነው። እንግዲህ ይሄንን ፓወር ፓነል ዲስከሽን እንግዶቻችንን የሚያስተዋውቅልን ፕላቲነም ስፖንሰራችን የሆኑ የኦቪድ ሪል ስቴት ሲኢኦ አቶ ፍሬው በየነ ከኛ ጋር እዚህ ፕሮግራም ላይ ተገኝቶ ነበረ። እሱ እንግዲህ ወደ እሱ ልውሰዳችሁና ፕሮግራማችንን ያስተዋውቅልናል።
አሁን ቀጥሎ ያለውን ዲስከሽን ጠራለው The Future of Tech የመጀመሪያ እንግዳችን የምትሆነው ህሊና ከበደ ቫይስ ፕሬዚደንት and ቴክኖሎጂ ስትራቴጂ at Edelman። ህሊና ከበደ ዌልካም ህሊና። ሁለተኛ እንግዳችን የምትሆነው ሴተ ስዩም ሪጂናል ዳይሬክተር SGL ክላውድ ሴኩሪቲ ማይክሮሶፍት። ስዩም ጌታቸው ሲኒየር ቫይስ ፕሬዚደንት ማርኬት ሪስክ ማኔጅመንት PNC። ሰለሞን ጌታቸው። ነብይ እጅጉ senior partner at FINN Partners። ነብይ እጅጉ Fin Partners።
Thank you for it. በጣም እናመሰግናለን። Well, thank you to our fantastic panelists. The reason why we like to do this particular session about technology is because I get a lot of emails from our viewers in Ethiopia anytime we do any tech-related programming. We have a huge population in Ethiopia that is in need of work opportunities, and tech seems to be the industry that would open a ton of doors for a lot of people in many ways, and the opportunities are limitless. So we want to open that up, you know, make sure that we have a diverse thought, diverse experience on the, just like what you see here on stage, to show what's possible. Right? There is no straight line. Not everybody goes into where they need to go in, you know, hey, I'm going to go be a computer scientist, or I'm an engineer and then I'm going to end up here. Everybody's journey is different. But we want to show people what's possible. So thank you so much for joining us. You will notice that when I ask a lot of the questions on this panel, and then the previous panel as well, we're very specific. We talk about it, the immigrant experience, because we live in America. We're the diaspora community. Our experience is going to be unique and different. Most of us don't grow up in this country, don't have the same opportunities, the same resources. Therefore, our struggles are going to be unique. And then the opportunities are going to be unique, and the way we go after those opportunities are going to be different based on our experiences and our background. So we're going to start, Helena, from you. Let's get to know you. Just tell us about your career journey, how you got started into tech, the industry, and why do you even stay?
Thank you, Helen, for first and foremost for having us here and creating this amazing platform. So my tech journey in 2 minutes. Right? It really started in Ethiopia, back home. My dad was an engineer, worked for IBM on huge mainframes that would fill up a room. My mom was an accountant and was great at math. So I had the early exposure and foundation early on. I was allowed to tinker with technology and computers and had access. Beyond that, as I got into, you know, K through 12 schooling, I had great teachers. Shout out to our Nazareth school teachers. Shout out to my high school teachers in the US, Dr. Coates and Dr. Bullock, which gave me access to physics and chemistry and internships in high school, right? Which usually you wait till you're in college to have these opportunities, but I was allowed to have those early on. So by the time I got to college, I understood the assignment. I knew what I needed to study and what to do. However, when I got to college, it was very challenging. You know, just figuring out how to pay rent, how to make friends, not to make friends, and just be an adult. And I persevered, but it was definitely a journey I wasn't ready for. I didn't have anyone prepare me for that experience. Once I got through that, though, by the senior year, I figured that out and got my first tech job as a consultant. As you know, tech is, you can go in so many different directions with it. But having that exposure as a consultant, first and foremost, I got to see many industries firsthand and make my way into many, many things. I've had as a project manager, as an engineer, as a software developer, as a product manager, as a co-founder of a startup, now as a VP of technology strategy for Edelman. So that's my journey.
Went around the circle is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Salomon.
I think I should first start by saying I am not in tech.
I know, yeah, you're right.
And
I
before you
should
ask
have.
why I'm here,
yes.
Yeah.
I occupy a kind of a nerdy space at the intersection of finance, mathematics, and computer science. I work for financial services. And my journey started actually in a very, very idealistic space. I came to the US to study mathematics and painting. And it didn't last long before I was actually corrected. You know, you can't come from a poor country and do two things that are very, very, impractical. And so I was kind of swayed into doing computer science as well as a second major. But still being idealistic, I was headed towards academia, and my foray into industry actually involved a lot of self-sabotage and sort of delay tactics so that I wouldn't have to actually accept offers and so on. And since then, I think tech industry, I've worked in the tech industry, I've worked in the finance industry, and why I stay is I found that even beyond academia, there's a space that actually is really welcoming of people with kind of analytical background. I think the only thing actually that really is required is analytical backgrounds, the ability to solve problems, to think about problems systematically, the being organized, and just understanding things quickly and just having the discipline. And my career in finance actually started the day, I should say, the day before 9/11. I'm really old.
No, you're not.
Oh yeah. And since then, I have found that I work with people that came from all sorts of backgrounds, right? All sorts of science backgrounds, and very few of them actually from any economics or finance. And what I found is really, with some analytical skills, maybe a certain amount of technology, it's very, very easy to latch on to actually any domain. And this is the domain I found and I call home.
I love it. Okay, great. Nevi, how'd you get here?
So I didn't go to Nazareth, for the disappointment. So I think, as a child, I was always curious, similar to Helena. My forte was through gaming, and I think I found a vested interest in being able to build something. Going into school, I knew it was comp sci, I knew it was information systems, I knew it was something around that range, but what it was going to yield was sort of unknown. And the first job that was really tailored towards that tech side of things happened to be in a cubicle, and I was a data hygienist, which is essentially just sitting there pumping out data, putting in queries, but I could never ever see what I did. I didn't know what the output of my work was, right? And soon enough, being interested in freelancing for friends, and that one cousin wants a website for his shoe collection or something, I ended up doing websites and applications that soon got me into the eyes of a gentleman that offered me a job in an ad agency. And I would never assume that an ad agency would be a place for somebody that did technology. And it fulfilled two things that my other job didn't. One, I always knew what the output of my work was. And then two, through that creativity, I found some level of joy, right? So that became two important things that I needed. And so throughout my career, I've spent time every day getting to know my clients and their world. So that itself was sort of like an ongoing thing where the start of a project means I need to know what you do, how you do it, who your people are, how you operate, and every day was a chance to learn something new and juggling. So one client's misery would be another one's joy, where I would find interest in others, right? So I think my tech journey has been really fulfilled through the lens of being able to solve problems that I think matter, but at the end of the day, what I build or what I help put out in the world, I can see, and I think that tangibility was important. So that's how I got here, and that's my journey.
Wonderful. Iseti.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for inviting us here to speak. So my tech journey actually is a bit non-traditional. I found tech at a hotel front desk. So what I mean by that is, you know, I was working at a hotel front desk, and I happened to be the person who everybody's coming to see why is my system not working, or, you know, getting all the questions on tech. I built a relationship with the support people, you know, the people that you call when your computer's not working. And before I know it, you know, I kind of got invited to come work for the support desk, where I got exposed to hardware, software, networking. So I kind of developed through that journey to become more of an IT generalist. And I also realized that there is a need for the business of IT. So there's a difference between being an IT practitioner and running the business of IT. So, you know, that is definitely the message I want to give today, is that in any sector, in any field you are, you could find, you know, the tech opportunity, use that industry knowledge, that vertical knowledge that you have, like what I did for the hotel company that I worked for, being in tech and getting started there. And also identifying the fact that, you know, your soft skills, the strength you may have in communications and, you know, being well organized, to the point earlier, being analytical, all of those skills are transferable to a tech industry, and what, you know, how you can move forward in tech. So my tech journey, again, I have a business degree, I don't have a tech degree, but then, you know, again, finding the space where I can translate technical people's, you know, language and conversation and specs and what they put out to the business is kind of how I was introduced to my tech journey. And by the way, I did go to Nazareth, but I also went to Cathedral, so there you go.
Yo, this is not on purpose, okay? It just happens to be. We just happen
Who
to be
hasn't?
here.
Yeah.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። the future of tech የሚለውን ፓነል ዲስከሽን እየቀጠልን ነው። ወደዛ ልወሰዳችሁ።
So there is a certain stereotype in this country where like a certain racial group seems to be the most competent or seems to be in tech, dominating the tech industry, whether it's in startup or, you know, any tech companies. But sometimes individuals may doubt their abilities. The psychological barriers, you know, do I really need to fit in? Do I fit in this industry? You know, is there a place for me here? So how do you overcome that? You know, like to be in the tech space or even finance, and tech interjects in many ways, like Solomon told us. So how do you overcome those perceptions, those wrong perceptions?
Great question. And it's really a question I started to grapple with maybe the past 10 years. Because early on, especially since I did my growing up a lot in Ethiopia, those biases and perceptions from my teachers or educators or society at large wasn't necessarily there. Maybe because I was a girl, some. But so that protected me in some ways. Because I was just, I had a sense of belonging even when the space was not created for me. So in my engineering classes, I was the only girl. But for the most part, I didn't care. I was just focused on the goal I had. However, once I graduated college, once you start sitting in meeting rooms, and when you recognize that you don't have space for you. It's really looking for the people that see you and your potential. It can just be one person in a company, and that can really propel you and validate you, right? So that's one. The other piece is, as you mature, you stop looking for validation from others, and you start building your tribe, of course, for the hard days, but then you know that your skill sets and are enough, honestly, to get you at the table. And once you're at the table, you are smart or smarter than the other person. So just remembering that there are people before you that created that table for you, and you just deserve to be at that spot. But I know that's not a direct answer, because if the answer varies depending where you are in your career journey. Yeah.
Have you had to overcome stereotype, Solomon? Same question.
Absolutely. And I think there's something I would say about maybe the upbringing we have in Ethiopia. I grew up in Ethiopia. Maybe it makes you, and also being an immigrant and not being exposed to being a minority for your formative years, that gives you a certain amount of, I think,
protection, maybe?
Protection, yeah. I would say. You can call it naivete, you can call it protection, whatever you call it, but it is something I've learned to value. It also means that you don't dwell on, parsing every interaction, why is this, why is, and it's kind of almost like an intentional blind eye, so that leaves you focusing on the things you do. But it is true, I think in the tech industry, actually I'm glad you didn't use the word minority, because it's a very, I think, interesting place where it's not about minority, it's about being black and being a woman, right? Because in some sense, technology is a place where actually a minority is a majority in some places. And you have to be very specific about what you're talking about. And it definitely, in terms of first impressions, right? Whether what people think about you, they see your name, they don't see your picture, what they expect, and how they react when you show up. There is that. I think you do pick up on that, and it's fine. But for the most part, what I've found is it takes a little bit of work to work your way up to where it's not an issue anymore. In the end, it's very hard to BS through tech and analytical fields. You have it or you don't have it, and if you have it, it will show, and I don't think you will be constantly aware of it. However, you will find that there's a certain amount of, I call it code switching. It's a term that I've learned that really captures what you do, which is you're constantly kind of trying very hard not to draw attention to the fact that you're black or you're different, right? You find yourself in many rooms where you're the only black, for example, and that is fine. And in actually, I have a friend that says, actually, don't see that as a disadvantage. That could actually be a competitive advantage. People will remember you because you're different, right? But I could say a lot. I'm very passionate about this, and maybe, I'll give Nabi a chance to speak, and we'll come back to this.
How do you see this, Nabi?
Also, being Ethiopian, there's a thing. As an immigrant, I think we come here, and once you're in work, we sort of have this thing, like, zimbala arfa sara, right? Like, the heads down, don't worry about anything, you're lucky you got this job, and that's the mentality we have. And what that does in the long run is it silences us, all right? Like, we don't even quite experience the kind of inequalities that happen in the workplace the same way others do, because that silence for us is so normal. Story that I have is, you hear the term imposter syndrome, and for me, imposter syndrome was something that was actually put for me versus something that I experienced. By that I mean, I remember at this point in my career where I got asked to be part of a pitch for a major client, and that was a big deal for me, right? Like, it's a major client, they must think I'm good at what I do, so I'm out there prepping, but I realized nobody sent me the pitch deck. Like, I didn't know what I was gonna speak to that day. And by the time I got back to work to ask, what is the thing, I was told that my role was really minimized, right? Like, I'm basically the designated dude basically moving the slides along, introducing myself as the tech guy. I was the black guy to make this company feel like they are a diverse company. That's how I was used, right? That does something to you. Like, so I questioned my ability, that imposter syndrome kicked in. And the moral of that story is something in that silence broke in me. I had to be vocal. And similar to the idea that I don't want to be seen as the black dude, that's all I wanted to be seen as. Yes, I am that Ethiopian, I am that guy in the room. And I think that mentality does something for you, and you stop thinking about like who you are or how you are seen, but you change the narrative to how you want to be seen, right? So I think that's the thing, is about owning your narrative and accepting that who we are is actually enough. And it takes a while, but you'll get there.
That's great. That's great. Seti.
Yeah, so, you know, being a black woman in IT leadership role, especially in the cybersecurity space, I don't see a lot of diversity. So as far as challenges, it's definitely there are challenges. There's times when, you know, I had right now about 15, but I had a team of 22 where we went to an offsite and someone addressed me as their admin because they're all men. I'm the only woman. But the one thing that I've learned is, you know, don't take it personal. You know, you can go in a room full of people that don't look like you, how they see you when you walk in versus how they treat you when you walk out. It's all about, you know, not try to take it personal, not trying to internalize it, but just be about the business, you know, bring your authentic self. I'm all about telling stories and really trying to connect on that human level, because at the end of the day, we're all human. So if you can bridge that human connection, then all the biases around, you know, gender or ethnicity, all of that go out the door. And imposter syndrome is real. That's this feeling that, oh my God, am I really supposed to be here, or did I just get lucky? And it's just acknowledging that it is the work that you've done and the opportunities that you are able to conquer that got you to where you are. So there's definitely challenges, but I think it's really important in what you do in showing people like us, you know, in the tech industry, so others, the little, you know, younger generation can really see that it could be done. Representation is critical. That's why we're here and sharing the story. So yes, there's definitely a challenge, but it could be overcome.
Let's talk about self-advocacy in tech. Usually people sometimes think, oh, I'm a tech guy, so I'm just going to focus. I don't need to network. I don't need to be out there. I just need to be technical. I mean, or maybe this is a perception that we have. So based on your own personal experience, what strategies as an individual do you use to effectively self-advocate for yourself in your industry?
Yeah, great question. And it also kind of ties to the other question you just asked, which is how do you overcome biases? So you start by doing, obviously, your internal work to show up, but you start also building your network internally within the company, externally. So you have soft influence at every level of the company. So that's what I would say.
Okay. Self-advocacy, how do you do that?
So I said earlier how the upbringing we have, let's say in Ethiopia, can be actually an asset in terms of overcoming kind of racial perceptions. When it comes to advocacy, I would say actually the opposite. The upbringing we have back home in Ethiopia can be actually somewhat of a drawback. Just think about a culture where you grow up being told being reserved, being quiet is a virtue. It's drilled into you. Actually have one of the compliments that I think my grandmother used to pay me was "Suma bagno," which means he's like he's sheep, which means it's actually meant to be I'm not disruptive. I just don't ruffle the, you know, I'm just quiet, right? So you come from a culture like that, and here you have to aggress.
This is true.
Well, it is. No, I feel very passionate about this. So, and here you have to, you know, you have to be your own advocate. You have to sell yourself aggressively. And it is just, it starts from how you even frame a resume, right? How it sounds, like, you know, how you market yourself and so on, how challenging it is. Now, on the flip side, and here's what I would say, I'm not saying you should become an aggressive self-advocate, advocate on steroids, partly because you also have to be mindful of the kind of the environment you navigate. For example, I am in a part of a business where there's a lot of the people around me share the same kind of background I have in Ethiopia. Eastern cultures. They're not Ethiopians, but they have Eastern cultures, and these are the same. They have the same issue. Like you don't stick your neck out. You don't speak up. You don't. So you have to know which battles you're facing, what the battleground is like. But I would say you have to know that no one, even the manager that really likes you, cannot advocate for you as much as you would. Right?
Yep, and I would add to that, in addition to your immediate manager, you should look for sponsors, people that would talk about you when you're not in the room, to complement your self-advocacy. That's super critical.
Absolutely.
Nabi, how do you do self-advocacy?
Helena kind of stole that last answer, but I would say that when I talk about like being vocal, part of it is like it's a training, and I think when you are in an industry like tech, the folks that are the loudest are the highest paid. It was as simple as that for me. The more they talked, the more they were in front of people, even talking about the projects that I did, they got the credit, right? And I think there's a balance in being able to say, all right, what do I need to do to sell myself? And every day I'm selling products, I'm selling a brand, I'm spending so much time trying to make something that is so mundane interesting to audiences, right? So when you flip that to yourself, how do you do that for you? And when I started treating myself, not degrading myself, but treating myself like a product, it was a little different, right? It's the way the words that you choose, the way that you try to get remembered in a room, and the delivery around how you basically identify with folks that are going to be advocates for you matter. So I started thinking about how would somebody talk about me if I'm not there? Like, oh, Nabi could do it. He does this and that. So like, can I reinforce more in that? And it's a very weird, cynical view, but it is something that is a skill set that's necessary. And I think unless you're vocal and unless you try to build a tribe at work, a tribe at home, a tribe with friends, that allows you to get to that level, it becomes sort of a routine. It's something that I would advise everybody to kind of do early on in their careers.
Sati, how do you do your self-advocacy?
For me, I think it's all about find a gap in whatever that you're doing and make that your thing and don't ask for permission. What do I mean by that? So, if let's say you are, a coder, but what you really like to do is innovate new ideas. So take the initiative to package up that idea, go stand in front of the mirror, practice on how you're going to present it, take the initiative to just go ahead and do it. So I think self-advocacy is all about, what was mentioned, speaking up. It is the tone in your voice when you talk to someone, right? It builds and establishes trust, and trust is where, opportunities come from. So sell yourself. Don't be shy to talk about what you do, what you bring to the table. Don't come across, cocky, per se, right? But it's all about speaking up. I mean, I used to coach a lot of people that, newly came from Ethiopia for interviews and so on and so forth. And what I notice a lot is even in the way we talk, we don't, there's confidence that comes across in the voice. Even that by itself, something as simple as that can be self-advocacy because people are going to pay attention, right? And also I think, take the initiative to do things that others may not be, taking the chance to do. Go a little bit outside of your day-to-day job requirements. And I think all of these things build yourself up to become that self-advocate. So when you go in the room and you start talking about yourself, you actually have talk track and points that you can bring up.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። the future of tech የሚለውን ፓነል ዲስካሽን እየቀጠልን ነው። ወደዛ ልወሰዳችሁ።
All right, let's talk about the biggest disruptor, which is AI. We know there's a lot of technical schools. People go in to learn all these coding and all of those things that they're doing, you know, and we have a lot of schools that teach these technical skills, but it is the big disruptor, the big unknown. Can we talk about how that is impacting the industries that you're specifically in? And from your view, where do you see the future trend from what you do?
Yeah, great question. It's been a hot topic now for a long time. Before I start answering the question too, I do want to say AI has been around now for multiple decades, and we've been using AI tools unknowingly sometimes for a long time. But now there's an attention on it because it's literally disrupting our workflow at our work and our jobs. Specifically, you know, I'm in comms, advertising, PR, marketing. So we do a lot of creative production, for example, creating videos or content or data mining to understand how public perception is shaped. So all of that now is powered and accelerated by AI. So I no longer use Google search. I use either Copilot or ChatGPT or something of that. So what it's really doing is it is in a way making us superhumans, because you're fed the answer you're looking for in an instant. So if you're a quick study, you can actually learn and grow quickly. It's also very scary, especially for a technologist. I mean, I felt like I was expiring every 6 months before AI, and I feel like every day there's something new, and I have to relearn everything. But I want to say 6 months ago, I just came to terms with it that everybody's trying to figure it out. It's okay. Like, no one is getting left behind. And it's going back to the fundamentals. So every industry is being disrupted. Do you have your data infrastructure right? Do you have your subject matter expertise locked in? And how do you then up-level your teams, your people, to accelerate with the lightning speed of AI? So that's kind of the current state of AI. Do you want to touch on, Solomon, on the future state of AI, where we're going?
Yes, I want to debate this actually.
Yeah.
No,
It's a debate,
it wouldn't be fun to be in agreement. No, I agree, and I appreciate the distinction Helena made that AI wasn't created in November of 2023 when ChatGPT came, right? AI has been around. In fact, maybe you could ask, what are we talking about, actually? What is this disruption we're talking about? What is a disruptor? Clearly, we are, I think there's this thing we call the kind of development S-curve, where maybe for a long time it doesn't look like much is happening, and then there's a very, very rapid, kind of evolution, and then maybe, it plateaus eventually. We're clearly, it feels like we are in that steep section of a development, but of what, right? Okay, so ChatGPT is maybe what you would call, I think the term that, I'm not an expert, so don't quote me on this, but is what you would call a generative AI, right? It's, you interact with it via, like, let's say, a prompt, and it, generates content and so on. And there's a whole other world that's not generative AI, and we're not even gonna go into what's called AGI, which is the most controversial, whether, sort of human intelligence, artificial general intelligence, AGI. We're not going to talk about that. But what is in the scope of, what is not generative AI? Well, that's the stuff that has been around in the finance industry, for example, which I represent, or you've been interacting with it via, I don't know, your Netflix recommendations or your Amazon recommendations or autocompletes or who knows, or IBM chess player like, Deep Blue, or it's been around. And so just for the purpose of this discussion, let's separate the use of traditional AI outside of generative AI in finance, because that one is not controversial. I think the acceptance of generative AI in finance is controversial. It's controversial. In fact, you could argue, there are questions about can you put generative AI in front of a customer-facing application? Can it run without human intervention, without kind of a human in the loop? Is it reliable? Is it right? Does it answer wrong things? Does it make decisions that could open you up to litigation? Or even there's the question of, okay, what kinds of jobs would that be replacing? Are we replacing kind of the mundane tasks with, generative AI, in which case you're saying you're replacing low-cost labor with high-cost technology. And that's not, for a business that has to answer to, quarterly financials and so on, the return on investment is controversial. Responsible AI is a very, is an important principle that you have to abide by. And so a lot of the work I see, this doesn't prevent employees from experimenting with generative AI. In fact, maybe one of the best uses of generative AI is sort of brainstorming, right? Or maybe some sort of work that's, maybe to nudge your creativity or to expand your knowledge base, but not necessarily to make decisions. Traditional AI, it fits, in fact, with traditional AI you hear, the profession you hear a lot of these days is data science. Almost everyone and their grandma is doing data science, which you can say it's maybe a kind of a technological and a slightly more glorified version of statistics. Statistics is not new. Statistics fits within finance. And a lot of these tasks have been there. There's a lot of money going into generative AI, and a lot of companies are started, to build on it. Clearly we're going somewhere. It's not, whether it is on a cusp of transforming is another thing. Maybe we'll come back to this, but I will say this because this event is being held in the Mid-Atlantic, and I'm sure we have contingents from across the river in Loudoun County. This has impact. One of the biggest issues actually is the energy demand of AI, this technological, the kind of what needs to power the training and so on that, the OpenAI and the Microsoft, the Googles are doing. In fact, so much so that Loudoun County is actually the single most concentrated data center geographic location of anywhere in the world. In fact, I think I've seen terms that call it data center alley. And these are businesses that are waiting to tap into the, Dominion power and so on. So there are some real impacts that will continue to be controversial in terms of adoption of generative AI. But traditional AI is not as as demand intensive, and there's nothing controversial about it.
Anything you want to add to the AI conversation, Nabi?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, okay.
So I'm a huge fan and advocate of this, but as much as we think about like the change, you hear this all the time, right? Like the technology leap that AI has created, right? I think we forget one thing, which is the human leap. Our ability, our behaviors, and how fast we are at adapting to these things is an important thing to look at, right? So think about it, like whether it's the behavior that we have around social apps and just the way it has been in the past decade to folks using AI today. Like I look at my own behavior. Like Alina, I don't use Google anymore. My dependency on this app is insane. I mean, I use it every other minute. And I'm doing so much more stuff than I could ever do, right? I have clients who are transforming their entire sector saying, how do I use this undefined AI thing that I think everybody else is using to help expedite some level of a process? So we're disrupting industries. Jobs are being created, jobs are getting lost. They're gonna be non-existent. That's the truth too. But within that, if you really think about it, today when a child is born, he has two identities, he or she has two identities, right? You have your digital identity, and it has no sort of right that your actual human self does. By that I mean your hospital record, your blood type, like the amount of data that is collected on that child all the way until in every action that they take throughout life, there's enough metadata in there to create a digital replica of you, right? And what I mean by that is it goes to this notion of ethics. What protection does that have? So for me, my interest in AI is in sort of the ethical side of AI. Today, if you search for something, everything is really based out of how clean your data is, like going back to that initial job I had, right? Who inputs that data, right? This is where racial stereotypes exist. This is your view of the world is in that data. So when you have an AI that's supposed to translate Amharic, but the data sets that it's using is coming from a website or two that was developed by some Europeans that just used the script. Is that accurate? What does it impose? How accurate is your view of a culture or a religion, right? Is it coming from us? Am I putting that information in there so that the AI is efficient? And that's the cusp of ethical AI that I think needs a discussion, you know? And I think as everybody is trying to figure this out, you have to think about what its implication is for the job, for your own protection, for its use case. Today's student, we're worried about them writing a paper using AI. No, I think you have to disrupt that. I think the student needs to figure out how to edit a paper written by AI. That's the world we're going to live in, right? But what are the boundaries that we get to? And I think in my field, and especially in technology, there's a fear. You're not going to be there are no coders in a few years, you know, and everybody's worried about that. But I think this is where transformation is important, and understanding and keeping up with it, because I think there's also a lot more hype, because everyone is a pundit. There's a lot more hype about what the future holds, right? And no one really knows. And I think being up to date with the information, understanding the core aspects of what it takes for AI to work. That is, learn your database, know your Python scripts, understand logical database relationships, and more importantly, today's liberal arts students are going to be tomorrow's techies, because those are the people that are going to power and create those imaginative, creative aspects using AI. It's not going to be your hardcore sciences, right? Because we're limited in the way we might think in that sense. So that's my thought.
Very interesting take. Sete, you want to add anything on?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of time just to talk about what is the opportunity for everyone in this. So, you know, I work for Microsoft. We're customer zero for Copilot, and you know, a lot of the AI conversations happening early on. If you are interested in AI and how you can leverage AI to be successful in whatever you're doing today, figure out how to ask AI the questions that could give you the best answers in your own industry vertical. What do I mean by that? So if you have, you know, access to ChatGPT, maybe you have enterprise ChatGPT, right? Like your company has its own data set that it looks at. Build your own, what we call prompt library, right? That's how you ask the questions to the ChatGPT, or if you use Copilot. Be that person that could put that library together and share it out. So again, back to my earlier point, you'll own that space. You become that AI champion for your own group, for your own team. I think one of the advantages that we have right now is that most people have access to this tool, which is kind of not traditionally how tech works. Tech is, you know, has not been that available. So, you know, the way we see it is it's a big change, generative AI. If you have Copilot, use that. That's the closest thing to AI you have access to. And then, you know, again, data security. Data security is critical for any AI conversation. So if you're looking to explore, opportunities in tech, look into security, cybersecurity, specifically around data security. Companies are worried on, you know, how this whole AI thing is going to translate, make sure their data is protected. So just wanted to talk about the opportunities that is available.
Excellent.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። the future of tech የሚለውን ፓነል ዲስከሽን እየቀጠልን ነው። ወደዛ ልውሰዳችሁ።
I'm going to change a little bit the topic. I'm going to get personal. I want to ask you all, describe, and this could be professionally, or it could be professionally, personally connected, any, what you would call my biggest failure. Okay? What lessons did you learn and how did it contribute to your success?
Really
be honest
question.
now.
So, what's interesting about this question is, we kind of have to look back and inventory massive amount of failures and figure out what the biggest one is. Because there's been so much, right? So, what I would share is that what the connective tissue and the theme of all my failures have been, because I had to examine that. Starting out again, growing up in Addis, coming here, it's all about self-sufficiency, putting your head down and working hard, and somebody will notice and elevate you. The work will speak for itself, etc., etc. So that's what I did. I didn't rely on friends. I didn't rely on mentors early on. I just thought I had to figure everything by myself. I didn't understand that there's a great saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a tribe. So I'm finally getting that message after so many years. So whether it's study groups when I was studying for my engineering exams, whether it's making sure that I had a network with the professors when I was at school, so that when I was looking for my internships, I already had people ready to support me. My first job when I got in, I thought I just had to go do the assignment, do more, but I didn't have to go socialize and build a network. So I had to learn that after a few years. So all of that accumulated to slowing down of my growth, taking lots of, tangents. But there's been, whether it's a pitch that failed, a company that didn't go as well as I wanted, a business unit that didn't pick up. We were experimenting with AI internally just 9 months ago, and everybody was excited about the idea, but it didn't go as planned. I mean, there's so many, and I had to tell myself, failure is okay. You dust yourself off and you pick up and you move forward. One other thing I would add is that the difference between when I failed early and now is when I failed early, I used to ignore and just start to just keep going ahead. Whereas now I'm learning to process my failure and my feelings around it, because it doesn't go anywhere. It just builds up and then it becomes something else. So definitely process your failures, embrace them, and move on forward. Sorry, I don't have any. There's been too many failures. Go ahead, Salamo.
Actually, the first thing I was going to say, Helen, for me the first 50 things that come to mind would require you to be either my therapist or nafsabat or...
being a talk show host, you could be a therapist because I listen a lot.
Yeah, I think... but, so here's the thing. Definitely, I would say, we could talk over a beer or something about some of my biggest failures, and many of them have nothing to do with professional life. And instead of talking about maybe biggest failures, and there are many and there will be others, let me just tell you about, I think, a personal challenge that I had to overcome early in my career, and maybe you could say I continue to kind of obviously improve on, but continue to struggle. And that is, I started in academia. I started in mathematics, and very theoretical mathematics, not even applied, very theoretical. And that's a business where it's almost contemplation is encouraged. You're thinking about problems. How useful they are is not what is important. Are they beautiful? Can you solve difficult problems? And so on. And once I made, you could say reluctantly initially, made the transition to industry, what I should have known and I should know is industry doesn't pay you to contemplate, right? You have to deliver. You deliver within constraint. There's time constraint. There's budget constraint. Industry doesn't reward you for coming up with the most elegant solution to something, right? You need to find a solution. You need to find a solution that's good enough for the business use at hand and move on. And so things like being a perfectionist that you would think are actually good traits, maybe when you are a researcher, actually don't quite turn out to be necessarily good traits. Being detail-oriented is good, but having the ability, learning the ability to prioritize, knowing what is important, what gives you a return or your attention, right? Not everything is important and not important equally. So that was a journey that was very, very difficult, I think. And what I found actually is, ultimately, I'm not sure that I have actually changed the way my core system still works. I think it is that. But what I have layered on it is kind of an operating system that works within industry and delivers within constraint, is able to prioritize. I'm not agonizing about every little detail or spending a lot of time on something that is interesting, regardless of whether it's useful or not. It's kind of like the way I'm not a native English speaker. My native language is Amharic. I can operate in English, but you wouldn't know it, right? So I view it that way. It's kind of my native system is there. It's still there. I struggle with it, but I am able to operate in an industry where contemplation is not what is rewarded.
Good answer. Nabi.
Therapy session and
It's
so
on.
many failures. I'd like to talk about, I think, the sort of reaction to failing versus the specific moment of failure. And I think there was this moment where it was so much that I think it completely changed my core operating system, as you may, was literally stuck, right? There's the Abasha mentality of so many lanyal, and there was just so much unknown. Like, it was filled with the sense of confidence that was just no longer there. I did not have a next move. I did not have a next play. And I dwelled in that space for a while, right? And getting out of it was a huge, valuable lesson, because I think the amount of time that I spent in that energy really shifted everything that I had in me before I got to that place, meaning the confidence, the vision, the drive, right? And when you lose drive in whatever profession, it chips away at a part of your soul, right? It takes away from joy. And I think how quickly I should recover from a failure became very important. And then really just putting it into perspective, like at the end of the day, how bad can it be and what are the priorities that matter were important. So I think for me, the lesson learned was my ability to process failure in a very different way. And some people do it naturally, and I envy them, and I have friends that like fail every day. There's one that just failed today. And they're amazing. But keep that kind of energy, but to be at that level and to, really like brush it off and proceed is a strength. And it's absolutely, I encourage everyone to go through a failing process, because you discover a part of you that you didn't know you had. And I was very confident about who I was, and the moment that I fell into that thing, it was a realization that made me course correct.
Great. Sati?
Same question. It might be really weird, but I cannot think of a failure, but there are a lot of times where I have lessons learned from an experience, right? But I never thought about it as failure, and I'm like a crazy eternal optimist, so people get like really irritated at me. But there are several times in my life where I found myself like, without a job, after having such a successful 12-year career at a certain company that I was with, all of a sudden I was unemployed, like, in a location where there was not a lot of opportunities. I had to be agile. Like, I started doing taxes. And then I became a manager of the 2 tax offices. And then I learned the tax system. So back to my earlier point, find tech and whatever you do. So you know, I've had a lot of times where I had to pick myself back up and just move forward. But again, you know, I think resilience is what comes out of that. The outcome of the learned opportunities has been, I don't care if I don't have my job tomorrow. I know I'll go somewhere and just be just fine. And it also comes from having like a strong support system around me, the love of my children, all of those things added. So it might not be a great question because I don't have a direct example of a failure, but there's a lot of times where I found myself in a place where I did not expect to be. And then, of course, cry for 5 minutes, but then get up and find the next opportunity.
It's a good attitude. So final question, what is one practical advice that you would give to someone that's starting out? And you know, Solomon, when you answer it, you can answer it whichever way. In the tech industry, and specifically Hilinana Esete, I'd like for you to talk about for women that are considering or thinking about getting in tech, but feeling maybe there might not be space for me. What one practical advice would you give? So I'll start with you, Esete, and then we'll flip it.
So the one practical advice that I would give, especially to women in technology, is please go into technology. There's not enough of us. And guess what? At least in many of the organizations that I've been to and I am in right now, let's say we have an interview loop and we have one woman interviewing, like every hiring manager is fighting over her. So, you know, the fact that it's not a lot of us is opening up doors that were really not traditionally open. So go into tech. If you don't like to code, I don't like to code, I'm more of a people person. There's a lot of opportunities in the business of IT. You could be in sales, you could be in marketing, you could be in, there's so many other things that you could, so don't shy away from it. You know, go on. I randomly applied to Microsoft. I did not know a soul, and I got a ping back 6 months later, which I thought was, you know, one of those Indian recruiters, I'm sorry. And I was just like randomly happened to get on a call with the HR person, and just randomly happened. Don't shy away from it, go for it. And if I have to pick and say what area I would recommend to strategically go into, cybersecurity is the most commonsensical IT field that I've been in. It makes sense, it's not as hard. So that would be my practical advice.
Navi, continue.
I agree on the cybersecurity. Like anything that is a detriment or a threat to society, security. I think being persistent is important. There's a story of a guy who, I call my mother like the best HR person because she gets like a family member that needs an internship and straight to me. And I'm known as the guy that got all these dawits. They all happen to be called dawits as my interns. But there was this one guy that was so persistent with, like, there was no job application on the website, right? Like, there was nothing. But he just saw me, like, Googled, he's got the forehead, he's Abisha, so he decides to send me an email and is like, you know, hey, this is who I am. It's like really nice, like, story of this kid who's ambitious and wants to be in tech. And please consider me, right? I'll be honest with you, I was like, this is amazing, this is awesome, forgot about this kid. He sent another email, I think 6 months later, at a time where we needed, you know, an entry-level position, and I got him into an interview. And honestly, I did it because of the fact, not he was Abashabachasayon, it was the fact that he was so determined, and I felt like that's the kind of person that you would want working for you, right? Fast forward, this kid is now hiring his own dawits in internship programs, and for me, I think the thing I got out of him was the persistency, and I used his persistency for my own things, for my own, you know, clients, and it works. And I think there's a thin line between being a telemarketer and bothering somebody, but also just like going for it. And so I'd advise anybody that thinks that they want to pursue something, jump in it. You know, why not?
One practical advice. You're going to try, Salim.
Oh, I have many.
I'm sure.
How long do you have? I think first, maybe I would say there are many productive careers you can have that are not tech, and good for you. follow your knack, whatever, or whatever you think is applicable. Now, about tech, I think maybe I'll answer a meta version of this question. So what I mean by that is, if you are STEM leaning, maybe you have the appetite to learn a little bit of coding, right? You don't have to go and become a computer science major. If you just have the appetite to do some coding course, I would recommend that you do it. And here's why. I think programming can allow you to latch onto any vertical domain. For example, finance, right? Finance, you can come to finance with some coding, absolutely zero knowledge about the institution of what is finance, what is the product, and so on. We can use you from day one. How? Well, we may have to spec for you what it is that needs to be done, but from day one, you can start delivering. And then with that, you can grow and learn the language of the field and complete the work. The difference it makes is 2 years later, 3 years later, once you have actually learned the business, I won't spec everything, the requirements for you. I would describe a problem to you. You go and divide the problem into things that need to be coded and so on. And the same, I think finance is just peripheral. I think you can do this. It could be, pharmaceuticals and so on. So that's my recommendation.
One piece of advice.
One piece of advice. I'll tell you why I stay in tech as part of that advice. It is the gift that keeps on giving. As it evolves, it carries you through, like Solomon said, through the journey of learning through industries, from finance to healthcare to retail to tech itself. So knowing that, it opens up so many doors, especially because the competition here in the U.S. especially, for native U.S. The native U.S. population, they're not technically inclined. And math is such a feared subject. Everybody starts the meeting saying, I'm not great at math, but 2 + 2 is 4. Right? So it gives you that advantage from the get-go. So you just need to know a little bit of technology and marry it to your comfort level. And then as Sete said, you don't have to be a master programmer. At every level, as a software engineer, as a front-end developer, as a product manager, as an engineering manager, as a leader, an IT support lead, there's so many, cybersecurity, there's just so many avenues to really channel whatever your capabilities are. So the possibilities are endless. Practical advice, make sure your LinkedIn profile is filled up properly with images, with what, if you don't already have a job, what your aspiration is for a job. Make sure that that's, you'd be surprised how many LinkedIn profiles are just blank or one-liner titles. That's one. For extra credit, as you learn about a new set of technologies, document your tech journey using LinkedIn's, I don't work for LinkedIn, but it is a powerful tool. So start documenting and sharing what you're learning. If you have a GitHub account, start posting it. Just share your journey and co-learn and create a space for people like you so that others that are looking for a developer or a product manager, whatever your line of interest is, they know that you are actively building the skill set. They know that you're interested and you have the receipt to show it. So that's what I would say. That was a very long answer.
No, that's okay.
Actually, Helen, I don't mean to steal your job.
Okay.
I do have one question to Helena that ties back to one of the early questions.
You stole my job.
It's not AI, at least.
Well, no, actually, because one of my early experiences, one way you combat kind of the early perception of being black and in a business, one way I actually was doing it was I would not put my image first. That way, you get to hear me before you see what I look like and before you form an impression. I have changed that over time. I have learned to change that. But that is, I think, that could use some practical advice. Is that good or bad?
So that's a great question, and it's a question I've chatted my husband about for a long time, especially for black male and also for black women. But what I've learned over time is that people want to know and see what you look like, who you are, and people expect it now. It's no longer an option. You know, it's trust building. Everything you share about yourself, you're building trust with their hiring manager, with the company. So biases would always be there. So your name, for example, right, is taken, it could be played against you. But I slowly started just showing up as who I am completely and shying away from the companies that won't appreciate that. So, another practical advice. I do this. When I go interview for a company, I look at the leadership team and I say, who is going to be my sponsor? I go back and do a LinkedIn search and look at all the people that they have in the company and say, okay, how many people that look like me, or that could be, if they don't look like me, that could be an advocate for me. Because I don't even want to play. I mean, and sometimes you have to play in the places where you're not wanted. And I did do that early on. But now, especially in DC or New York or places where there's huge representation, you have options. You have options, so use them. But yeah, I think you just have to show up, show your videos, your pictures, your full name, and build this tribe, and then we go and hire Dawit.
Please put your picture on LinkedIn. We literally run to LinkedIn to see if you're a diversity candidate, just so we can hire you.
That's
so
a good point.
my advice would be, if you want to make me a token to your company, make me. So like put your picture out there. It would be my advice.
And I don't even think, you know, it's a tech panel. I don't even think in the age of social media, you can really hide from anybody. If people want to know, it takes a 2-minute Google search and they'll find out who you look like and what you are. But thank you for this insightful, incredible conversation. I appreciate all of you. Before I call Ovid, because you know we're gonna take a picture and then they have a drawing for that house we talked about at the beginning of the event. So we're gonna call him, you know, Freo, and then his team are gonna come and then they're gonna do the digital drawing, I believe. So thank you. November 15 and 16, Empower is going to Addis. So for those of you that are going to be there, it's going to be epic, and we're getting ready for that. So keep that in the back of your mind. November 15 and 16, we're taking it to Addis. All right, so, I'm gonna start shaking. I'm gonna be, እሺ ፍሬው
I think ከነበሩን ውስጥ አንድ ሰው አሸናፊ መሆን ስላለበት የግድ አንድ የቤት ባለቤት ይሆናል። ስቱዲዮ ነው የሚሆነው ቤቱ። ኦቪድ ቦሌ ቡልቡላ ከተማ በሚገነባበት ቦታ ላይ ነው የሚሆነው። የዛ አሸናፊ ስሙን ሳይሆን አባቱን ነው የምጠራው። እሺ ካለ ይመጣል። ማን ነው? መሰለ፣ የአባት ስም መሰለ፣ ሳባ መሰለ፣ ሳባ መሰለ። ሳባ መሰለ የቤት ተሸላሚ ሆናለች። የሚገርመው የመጀመሪያ ገዢ ነበረች ዛሬ።
ሊያበረክቱ ነው ይሄንን ሳባ ሳቢና yes This is fantastic. በጣም ደስ ይላል. Congratulations Ovid. Thank you so much. What an amazing thing. በጣም ደስ የሚል ነገር እግዚአብሔር ይስጥልን. በጣም ደስ ብሎናል. እንግዲህ ያው እንደነገሯችሁ ቼክ አድርጓቸው. They're going to be in how many cities? ስንት ቦታ ነው ያላችሁት እዚህ ሀገር? አሜሪካን ሀገር? 3 ይኖራቸዋል. Okay, perfect. Thank you for coming. በጣም እናመሰግናለን. All right. So our volunteers, if you could come on the stage, I do want to say thank you. ምክንያቱም ያለ እነሱ ይሄ ኢቨንት happen አያደርግም. So ዝናሽ, where is Kuku? Salemዬ ታለች? My beautiful daughter Maraki. Lydia, I mean, there's so many of you. Arsema, I don't know where she is, but I want to say thank you. Without them, Ephraim, where are you? And then, of course, Team EBS. I mean, you guys are amazing. Gideon, Andy, everybody, all the camera crew. We want to say thank you so much. Lemon, ihe Helen sara adellam, ihe ye team sara no adella. And I may be the voice here, but you guys are the superstars. So Zee, come on up. We'll take a quick picture. And then I want to thank all of you attendees. የመጣችሁ ይሄንን ሰፖርት ኢቨንት ለማድረግ ቬንደሮቻችንን ኤግዚቢተሮቻችንን ቢዝነሶቹን ሰፖርት ለማድረግ እናንተ ስትመጡ ነው ይሄ ኢቨንት የሚያድገውና tell all of your friends it's going to be back next year August 2nd same time same place አስተያየታችሁን ማደግ የምንችለው constructive የሆነ ይሄ አይዲያ አለን ኢቨንታችሁ እንደዚህ አርጉ ብላችሁ የምትመክሩንን በሙሉ በጣም እንቀበላለን so thank you very much
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ ይሄ ሶስተኛና የመጨረሻው the future of tech የሚለው ፓነል ዲስከሽን ላይ ጥሩ ሐሳቦች እንደወሰዳችሁ በመተማመን እንግዲህ ደስ የሚለው ኒውስ ደስ የሚለው የመስራችሁ ይሄንን empower the community weekend empower አዲስ ብለን ወደ ኢትዮጵያ ኖቬምበር 15 እና 16 በሚሌኒየም ሆል ወደናንተ እየመጣን ስለሆነ በጣም ደስ በሚል ዝግጅት ላይ ነው ያለነው እንግዲህ ምርትና አገልግሎታቸውን ማስተዋወቅ ለምትፈልጉ ከኛ ጋር ፓርትነር ማድረግ ለምትፈልጉ ስፖንሰር ማድረግ ለምትፈልጉ info@empowercw.com ብላችሁ መልእክት ብትልኩልን ወዲያው መልስ እንሰጣችኋለን ማለት ነው እንግዲህ ይህንን ፕሮግራም ስለተከታተላችሁን በጣም አድርጌ አመሰግናችኋለሁ በሚቀጥለው ሳምንት በሌላ ፕሮግራም እስከምንገናኝ ደህና ቆዩልን